Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Hey, Caroline, how are you today?
I am doing well. I am feeling a little guilty because I had a lot of trouble getting connected to the record today.
We did. We've talked about this before. Occasionally when we have technical difficulties, for those who don't know, we use they are not a sponsor. We use a online podcasting service called Squadcast to record our episodes because Caroline's at her branch, I'm at home, and it just makes things a lot easier for everybody. But occasionally we run into some online technical difficulties. And what's nice when we do record online is like we can see each other. But it's kind of funny because today, Caroline, like I could see you, but like your video is frozen. So it's funny because it froze at a good time too. Like you have a smile on your face. You look really good.
Well, that's good.
So yeah.
And see, I can see you perfectly. So for me, nothing is different. So I don't know. We'll just see how this goes. But it does make me laugh because I had just finished telling our guest today how easy Squadcast is to use. And usually it really is.
Absolutely. So, today we do have a returning guest. It's been quite a while since this guest last appeared with us. In fact, actually, a small little tidbit behind the scenes here for longtime listeners. Our guest today actually co-hosted an episode with me when we interviewed our CEO, Pilar Martinez. I was like, I needed a co-host, and it was like an hour before we recorded, and sent her a note, and she was on the ball. So we're so happy to have back on the show finally, community librarian Laura Young. Laura, welcome back to Overdue Finds. How's it going today?
Hello, I'm so excited to be back. I love the podcast, and it has been a long time. So I'd kind of forgotten about that co-hosting gig until I found out I was going to be on the podcast today, and it all came flashing back.
That's right. I was like, hey, you have like half an hour to prepare to interview our boss. So let's do this.
It was all good. So yeah, no, I'm really happy to be here with both of you.
Yeah.
And today, though, we're happy to have you on because today we've got a really special topic. And Caroline, this is one that, when we talk about different episode ideas, this one's come up quite a few times. And for whatever reason, we've just kind of been like, maybe we'll save it for later. And we thought, we have our gala coming up. We're doing this awesome program called Ready, Set, Read, and it ties into the Imagination Library, which is run by today's topic, of course, through Dolly Parton. So today, of course, we are talking all about Dolly Parton. Like, Caroline, when you think of like icons of pop culture, Dolly Parton is like, she's like near the top of that list, isn't she?
Absolutely. Normally I come in, I have my notes. Sometimes I hold them up to show you for comedic effect, which will not work today, unfortunately. But I have like 4 different pages of notes here because I am ready. I am prepped. I am ready to talk about Dolly Parton.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss. And it's funny, you think about like a library podcast, you're like, really? You're talking about Dolly Parton? But you know what? Between the movies and the music, the philanthropy, probably going to chat a little bit about Dollywood, maybe. There's so much to share about all things Dolly Parton.
And really, when I was doing up the outline, I put on the notes here that Caroline will share some fun facts. You know how I love the fun facts. And then I thought, do we really need to? Do we really need to explore who she is? And then I started putting it together and I thought, oh, yes, there is just so much here that we will need these fun facts as kind of setting the framework for who this artist is.
Yeah. Absolutely. Today's going to be a fun show. Laura, we're happy to have you back. And are you a big Dolly Parton fan?
I love Dolly.
Yeah,
Love her so much.
It's hard not to. Like, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but like, I don't know. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Dolly Parton. You can't.
No.
No, and I was going to say, it's okay that you like left this subject till now, because Dolly Parton is eternal. So it doesn't matter when you talk about her.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So before we get into our overdue finds picks, Caroline, I'm so excited because we just wrapped up our latest Forward Thinking Speaker Series event with Brian Stevenson. And guess what? We actually have another one just around the corner. So tickets for our next Forward Thinking Speaker Series event are now on sale. You won't want to miss Christine Sinclair, Scoring Success, presented by Edmonton Community Foundation on Sunday, November 19th at the Edmonton Convention Center. In this moderated chat, Christine will recount her incredible story of humble beginnings in Burnaby, BC, developing a love and passion for the game of soccer, and her commitment to excellence, hard work, dedication, and the ability to not let adversity get to her led to unbelievable successes as both a member of the Portland Thorns and captain of the Canadian national women's soccer team. Tickets are just $10 each, with proceeds supporting our Ready, Set, Read program. Grab your tickets at epl.ca/speaker series. Grab those because tickets I think are going to go fast for this one. One of the really cool things about this event, this is like the first time the event itself is on a Sunday, but this is actually going to be like a Sunday afternoon event. So it's going to start at 2:00. We know there's lots of families who have kids enrolled in soccer, and you get to see one of the Canada's greatest soccer players chat with the audience and everything. It's going to be such a great event.
I'm really looking forward to it. I read her memoir earlier this year. I didn't know a lot about the details of soccer, but I was hooked in it and just like loved what she had to say about teamwork and commitment and just following your dreams and making them come true. Back a couple years ago now, EPL had another soccer player, Katrina LeBlanc, was a forward-thinking speaker series, and she was just terrific. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Christine Sinclair's session goes.
Absolutely. It's going to be a good one, and get your tickets. All right. So let's share some of our own overdue finds that we've been enjoying since our last episode. Laura, I'm going to start with you. What have you been enjoying lately?
Sure. So when I was thinking about what to talk about, I thought about a recommendation I got recently that's maybe a little outside of my usual reading speed, but I've been reading the essay by David Foster Wallace, A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again.
I've always wanted to read that, so I'm really curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, so the reason I started reading it was I was on vacation in the Maritimes where there are a lot of cruise ships. And so someone recommended I read it if I was thinking about cruise ships. So if you haven't read it, it is David Foster Wallace was asked to go on a cruise, and that he wasn't paid by the cruise ship. I think it was for a magazine, so he was able to give a very unfiltered view about what being on a large cruise ship was like. And his conclusion is that it reminds you of your own mortality.
Wow.
In a bad way. So it's I mean, I've never read Infinite Jest. David Foster Wallace was kind of only on my radar as a literary figure and a pop culture figure, but he can write. He's a good writer. And it's a really interesting essay, something you think like, well, how much could you say about being on a cruise ship? Like, yeah, maybe it's some people love it, some people don't, but it really, somehow he gets into like what life is about through it. It's worth the read.
Wow. Mm-hmm. How long ago did he write this?
Oh gosh. Let me take a look. It's in the 90s, I think. It's part of a larger, you can get it from the library as part of a larger essay collection with the same title, A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, and it's the last essay. It was published in, well, this is 2009, but that seems to, I think that might be just this edition.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But it's a classic, and for a reason, it's definitely worth the read. And it made me understand a joke in Tina Fey's autobiography. She makes one of her chapters is titled "A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again."
There is also an episode of The Simpsons where they go on a cruise, and then either they get stuck there or Bart manipulates things so that they just live on the cruise ship for a while because it's so great, but then it turns out to not be great. And I think the episode is called A Supposedly Fun Thing Bart Will Never Do Again.
Makes sense. 1997 was when it was published originally. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, worth going in the Wayback Machine to read it.
That sounds good. Caroline, how about you? What have you been enjoying lately?
I have a book that was just published earlier this year, and it is called The Art Thief, A True Story of Love, Crime, and a Dangerous Obsession by Michael Finkel. And it's the story of Stefan Breitweiser, the world's most prolific art thief, who over a period of time amassed a stolen collection worth over $1.4 billion, and he kept it all in his attic where he lived in his mother's house. It's a really interesting story. If I had any idea what these words actually meant, I would option this to be a movie. I don't actually know how you do that or why, like how. I mean, I'm not going to make the movie, but someone should, because it's very cinematic in how it's written. Just the rise of this gentleman art thief who would go to kind of small village museums in Europe, and because it's Europe, they all seem to have some, pieces that are either really appealing or by famous artists or, minor works of this or that, and they don't actually have a lot of security in place. And so he would just kind of stick his hand in a display case and walk away with some, Roman coins, or just walk past a painting and slip it in his girlfriend's purse. And this went on, and yeah, he just kept storing it in his attic bedroom. And the story kind of goes a little bit into, the history of like art and museums. And there are a couple interesting passages of, but isn't a lot of art stolen, whether it's government sanctioned or by individuals, raises the question of like, what do you do with stolen art? Because people, like, how do you turn it into profit, or like, what is this? And he was stealing because he loved it. He wanted to have and appreciate the pieces and just surround himself in beauty, and his relationship with his girlfriend, and then ultimately, how this was all found out. It just really, it hits all the beats of a really engaging story. And I would love to see a movie, documentary, anything on this, but highly recommend checking out The Art Thief by Michael Finkel.
Wow. And sorry, what was his name again?
Stefan Breitweiser was...
Like with a name like that, you pretty much... You will become like a world's most interesting man type thing with that type of name, I think. Like, and it was interesting what you said too about like about art and like that's stolen, and like if somebody could like deliver the Mona Lisa to me and like it would be like, okay, you have to sell this thing. Like I would have no idea where to even start with that. I'm not suave enough to do anything like that.
Yeah, and there's all these stories of one of the passages is that like he the amount that the monetary amount that he stole was, equivalent to what the Nazis stole in World War II. When you think of, countries visiting other countries and maybe helping themselves to a few pieces of art or claiming something, and then when someone says, "Oh, that's actually mine," they don't often give it back. But then security, like the British Museum, has been in the news around security and just kind of you assume things, and he was able to exploit a number of flaws that I would have to assume no longer exist in the system. I'm not my big thing was like, oh, I should make this into a movie, not I should become an art thief. So.
This is a tale that more people need to know about.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to put that in my to be read pile. This is catnip to me. I love stories about art theft. It's such a strange world.
This is really good.
It's very niche. Have you ever seen the movie, this is kind of tangential, but have you ever seen the movie How to Steal a Million with Audrey Hepburn?
No, but I will now.
It's amazing. It's about her becoming an art forger, and also there's a romance. It's really good.
Yeah, I had read a lot of the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston, which had the 13 famous pieces stolen.
There's a podcast about that, isn't there?
There's a podcast and a Netflix documentary on that as well. And when you go, the museum, because she had stipulated in her will that no art was to be added or removed from the collection, in terms of curating it, they just have the blank spots on the wall where the stolen art was taken.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. Bryce, what have you been enjoying?
I think this qualifies as nonfiction. I also have a little bit of kind of nonfiction to share this week. So, you know what? Recently, I was in a bookstore and I came across a title that, just based on the cover of the book and the title, I was like, this seems like something that we can chat about on the show. So, of course, instead of buying the book, I have my handy EPL app on my phone and placed a hold on it immediately. And just recently got a copy of it, and I'm having a blast with it. And the book is called How to Survive History, and it's by Cody Cassidy. Caroline, we quite a few times on the show, we've chatted about time travel every now and then. And
yeah.
One of the interesting parts of time travel too is if I actually, let's say you go back in time and you're like, I'm going to go on the Titanic. I think I know a way off this thing. This book actually tells you how to survive the Titanic wreck, and as well as a bunch of other disasters from history. So basically the book itself takes a look at history's deadliest catastrophes, and using hindsight and modern science gives you tips on how to survive these events. So it's actually kind of funny too, because obviously it tells you where you should be on the Titanic when it starts to sink. There's even diagrams in there too. So it's got like a map of the Titanic, and it's like, be here at 10:50 p.m. This door will unlock. So it goes into quite a bit of detail there. Also too, things like how to outrun a dinosaur, how to survive the asteroid that took them all out. If you were in Pompeii when the volcano erupted, where could you go to actually survive that? So it's actually a really cool book. Obviously we have it in our collection, and it's actually fairly short. It's about 170 pages or so, and each kind of chapter is only about 10-15 pages. So for a slow reader like me, this is right up my alley. It's such a fun book, and I have a feeling I'll be chatting about it again maybe at the end of the year on our best of episode.
Now, I know that you're still kind of working on it, but when it comes to things like the Titanic, does it allow for variables like falling in love?
No, it doesn't quite go into that as much, but it's funny on the Titanic one, it does go into like, okay, like you get a raft and go back, and this is where you would have bought your ticket from, and demand your £8 back from the ticket that you bought, stuff like that. So it's pretty entertaining.
Do you have a favorite disaster in it so far?
The Donner Party one is pretty interesting. Ooh. I enjoyed that one. As dark as that one is. Titanic, though, one is probably my favorite just because I think it's a disaster that pretty much everybody knows a little bit about, and obviously thanks to the movie, and can kind of visualize it maybe a little bit better than some of the other past catastrophes that are talked about in the book.
Well, I just placed a hold on it, so.
Oh, good. I'm sure you'll love it. All right. So today, the reason why we're here, we're chatting all about the great Dolly Parton. Caroline, you teased us at the very beginning of the episode. You mentioned you do have some fun facts and little Dolly Parton trivia tidbits that you can share with us, right?
Absolutely. So Dolly Rebecca Parton, her actual name is Dolly Parton, is an American singer-songwriter, musician, actress, philanthropist, and businesswoman. She was born on January 19th, 1946, in a one-room cabin by the Little Pigeon River in Tennessee. She was the fourth of 12 children, and she credits her father for her business savvy and her mother for her musical abilities. She began performing as a child and appeared at the Grand Ole Opry at 13. Her initial success came as a songwriter, and she wasn't until she finally convinced people to let her record music that she broke into the country music scene. Her first single, Dumb Blonde, reached number 24 on the Billboard country charts in 1967. That same year, her first full-length album, Hello, I'm Dolly, was released. Since then, she's had 25 singles reach number 1 on the Billboard country chart. Her first big screen role was as Dora Lee Rhodes in 9 to 5. She later appeared in other movies like The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, Rhinestone, and Steel Magnolias. She's appeared as herself in movies like The Beverly Hillbillies, Miss Congeniality 2, Armed and Fabulous, as well as TV shows like Alvin and the Chipmunks, Designing Women, The Simpsons, and The Orville. She's also produced several specials and TV movies, including Dolly Parton's Coat of Many Colors, Dolly Parton's Heartstrings, and Dolly Parton's Christmas Coat of Many Colors, Circle of Love. Dolly married Carl Thomas Dean in 1966. He's now retired from running an asphalt road paving business in Nashville. He rarely accompanies his wife to events or appears publicly. It is incredibly hard to find a photo of them that has been taken in like the last 30 years on Google. So she has been named to the Grammy Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She's twice been nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Song, has 51 Grammy nominations and 11 awards. She has a Tony nomination for 9 to 5 the Musical and an Emmy for Dolly Parton's Christmas on the Square. She also received the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval, the first time that the seal had been awarded to a person instead of a company or a product, because she is just that good. She's the co-owner of the Dollywood Company, which operates the Dollywood theme park and sees over 3 million visitors a year. Her efforts to preserve the bald eagle through the American Eagle Foundation Sanctuary at Dollywood earned her an award from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. She's donated millions to Vanderbilt University Medical Center, including towards research that was critical for the early stages of the development of the Moderna virus for COVID-19. And her Imagination Library has given away more than 100 million free books to children. That's who we're talking about today.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite incredible when you hear all of that. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it here, but it's just amazing. Obviously the philanthropy, and then the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame one cracks me up too a little bit, because I remember when she was up for it, I think she initially said that she wouldn't accept it because she didn't release a rock album or something.
Yeah.
But then eventually she allowed it and said, I think she still will eventually. So I mean, I'll totally buy that album when it comes out.
And later this year, yes.
Oh, okay. And I think she said like, okay, I guess I'll take it if you guys want me to have it.
Yeah. So all of those points, as we talked about music, movies, TV, philanthropy, all of this stuff, what are some of your memories of or associations with Dolly Parton? Laura?
So I was thinking about this, like when I became aware of Dolly Parton, and I think it's kind of funny. I was thinking about how my awareness of her actually wasn't initially through her, but through pop culture references to her, and that kind of came at her backwards. So the first time I really remember being aware of Dolly Parton was there's a Gilmore Girls episode, I think it's maybe in season 7, where Lorelai is singing karaoke to Rory when she graduates, and she sings "I Will Always Love You." And Lane says to Rory, "Oh, I didn't know that Lorelai was a Whitney fan." And Rory says, no, she's a Dolly fan. And then I was like, wait, Dolly Parton wrote that song? And then I went backwards through and started listening to more Dolly. And it's kind of been that way all through. There's been a couple of YA novels that reference Dolly Parton and her music. There's one called Dumplin' it has a movie also that heavily references her music. And so I think I explored Dolly because the things I was interested in were interested in her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she would definitely, by the time I was becoming aware of her, it was through a lens of pop culture that had already kind of consumed her in a way. Like, she was always in charge, but once you kind of have that image out there, and she's talked about, with the hair and the makeup and the outfits and everything around kind of how deliberate her look and act is. I think through the 90s for sure, and this came through in some of the research that I did, the 90s was not peak Dolly time. And so like through the 60s, 70s, 80s, early 80s to mid 80s, late 80s even with Steel Magnolias, that was kind of prime Dolly time. And then through the 90s, it's not that there was even a backlash, it just wasn't as dominant. I say that, and then you look and she's making all these like cameo appearances and releasing music, so she was always there. But it wasn't until I think into the 2000s again where she started kind of being herself again in pop culture like that.
And I think at that time, too, in the 2000s, she became really savvy about what duets she would do and partnerships. And I think she would, some of those connections are organic. I mean, she is Miley Cyrus's godmother, and so she sings with her. But I think she's also been very savvy about showing up kind of in places you might not expect her. And it always feels natural, but it connects her to different audiences.
For sure. Bryce, what are some of your Dolly memories?
Actually, very, very similar to kind of Laura's and actually both of yours. I don't remember exactly when or where I was like, oh, that's Dolly Parton. Like, she was just always there. I think probably just knew her as a celebrity of some kind, just kind of through pop culture in general, as a kid. And I knew that she was in probably knew her more from like, probably knew her more as probably an actress than I did probably as a country singer, just because my parents didn't really listen to country, but like I think I remember her on the Muppet Show and just seeing her here and there at, a few different things. So yeah. And it's funny, Laura used that "I Will Always Love You" reference from Gilmore Girls. And yeah, I think I remember too when the Bodyguard soundtrack came out, and then people were like, oh, hey, actually, this isn't a Whitney Houston song. Like, this was originally written and performed by Dolly Parton. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't really put it together at first, but yeah, she's just kind of she's always been there. And yeah, just the whole look, the whole presentation, she's just, she just stands out. And it's just so iconic. So, I mentioned the music. I didn't really listen to much of her music growing up, but Laura, I guess, have you listened to much of her music at all? And maybe what songs come to mind for you?
Yeah, I've listened to quite a bit of her music now. Like I said, I kind of went backwards. And I remember when I read Dumplin', the premise is that there's a teenager who's enters, like kind of against her will, a teen pageant, but she gets advice from drag queens about how to kind of carry herself, and the drag queen that is her mentor is a Dolly, does Dolly drag. And so I kind of went through the catalog first that way. I'd say I'm not like a deep cut person. Like, I'm not going to say like, oh, my favorite song is something you've never heard of. And she has so many albums. I was reading actually EPL has a good book, just a compendium of all her interviews, and it's quite interesting. And one of her early interviews, she'd already had 13 solo albums. So wow. Like, it's a deep catalog. So I would say like Jolene is my forever favorite. I mean, that's not a deep cut or original answer. But man, it's a banger. I listened to it several times yesterday, and I watched her sing it with Miley Cyrus and I was going to say Brandi Carlile, but I think she sang "I Will Always Love You" with Brandi Carlile. But anyway, she sung it with several different people, and it's always good.
Jolene is totally, it's probably, I don't know if you could say it's her most iconic song, but definitely top 3 for sure if you're thinking of Dolly Parton songs. Caroline, how about you? Like, are you a fan of her music? Do you have any favorite songs of hers?
One of the things I love is that she wrote Jolene and "I Will Always Love You" in the same night. Like, that was a one day, and then the next day those songs existed, and I just love that. And Laura, when you talk about the deep discography of Dolly Parton, it's estimated that she's written over 3,000 songs. She was a songwriter first before she ever started performing and singing them, recording them. And it's, as she said, that she writes something, whether it's a song or an idea or a sketch or something, every single day. And so there could just be these like troves still to be discovered or made around it. So I think that's really great. I've always loved 9 to 5.
Oh.
And
also a banger.
Yeah,
it
right?
Is.
And like, yeah. I was just recently, I came across, even before we were talking about this episode, an interview of her on a late night talk show where she's talking about how she developed like the sound of it. It's her nails. She is playing her fingernails.
Mm-hmm. And her acrylics.
Yes. And then she demonstrates, and first you're like, what? And then she demonstrates, and it just makes so much sense and no sense at all. And it's just this, like, in my research, she's not been, formally trained on any instrument. She doesn't read music, I don't think, but she just has this sense of what sounds good and how to do it. And I think that comes through with 9 to 5. I love the different ways of I Will Always Love You. And I love how it was never, she never kind of encouraged any competition between her and Whitney Houston. And another great story that points to her savvy is that she was approached by Colonel Parker, Elvis Presley's manager, for him to record that. And she found out that she would have to give up the rights to it for Elvis to sing it. And she's like, no, I don't think so. So
she said she cried all night and then said no.
Yeah.
Which I love. Like, you're crying all night, but there's no doubt it's your song. You're not going to give it away.
Yeah. And just to have that firm sense of self in her. And I think that's why she's been so good at it. I mean, Islands in the Stream, I love. Her Christmas album actually is probably my favorite with Dolly. And it's only been in the last couple years that I've really embraced it. But her Christmas album with Kenny Rogers is just nice. It's perfect. It's exactly the feeling I want when I reach for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Caroline, you mentioned that Dolly wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the same night. Like, think about how much money she just made in that one night of writing music. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And you know what's great about Dolly? I read a couple interviews preparing for this, and she's pretty unapologetic about money. Like,
oh, really?
When she's talking about the Elvis stuff, she said, I'm glad I made that decision. Do you know how much money I made later on because of it? And I think that's part of her charm too. Like, she stands it. She's not ashamed to say, I'm good, I'm famous for it, and I've made a lot of money from it, and that's a good thing.
And I think that definitely one of the she stands behind things like that, and where she has used her money. I mean, she would be fully entitled to just keep all of her money and do whatever she wants with it. And what she has chosen to do is invest it in a part of the world that did not have a lot of investment, a part of America that did not have a lot of investment. And there's been studies on how the impact she's had on rural Tennessee and things like Dollywood, and the aid money that she's given to
for fire relief
victims of the fire relief. They've studied her approach and how the foundation gave away structured money over time so that people could it wasn't a single lump sum, but it wasn't indefinite. It was just the approach was just made sense, and it's more effective than a lot of many other philanthropic approaches. And I included the Bald Eagle Award because that was just an unexpected one. But then you read back and you see, she's invested in the medical world because of some illness that's been in the family and the connections that she has to different things there. She's done the literacy that we're going to talk about because her father never knew how to read and write. These things are deeply personal to her. And I think it's so interesting to see how she's kind of used all of that. But we're getting off topic. Bryce, what songs do you love?
Yeah, it's funny. Most of them have actually been mentioned already. Jolene obviously is definitely one. A couple of things about that song though. Did you know that the White Stripes actually perform the song Jolene as well?
I did not.
Yeah, so they've got a version. I mean, it's not as good, obviously, as the Dolly Parton version, but on its own, it's kind of cool to hear Jack White sing it and the White Stripes perform it. So definitely a version you should check out if you get a chance. And also, too, I've talked about the show before on past episodes of the podcast, but I love the animated show American Dad. And there's one where Roger the Alien is a huge fan of Dolly Parton, and he sings Jolene in it as well. So it's very funny, and I recommend you find that clip on YouTube. But yeah, 9 to 5, like you said, is a total banger.
Pour myself a cup of ambition. That's like the best lyric.
Yeah,
maybe ever.
That's one where so this is kind of funny. During like the height of the pandemic, my friends and I were playing a lot of Call of Duty online, and I made this Spotify playlist where it was kind of like these songs that were kind of inspired by us playing Call of Duty, and, you know, music I thought would be really kind of fun in the background to have playing. I included 9 to 5 on there just because it was kind of like we'd go in, we'd shoot some bad guys, grab some cash, and get out of there all in a day's work. So 9 to 5 made our Call of Duty soundtrack, which I always enjoy. And yeah, Islands in the Stream, obviously a song that she performed with Kenny Rogers. And Caroline, as you mentioned, that Christmas album, I just became aware of it like a few years ago as well. So yeah, the name of that album, just in case you want to look it up, is called Once Upon a Christmas. And it actually came out in 1984. There was a TV special tied to it. One of my favorite songs from that album, too, is A Christmas to Remember. So yeah, obviously I knew that her and Kenny Rogers had a really good working relationship, and they did quite a few duets over the years. And that was always kind of really cool when they performed together.
Nice. And if you're interested in Dolly Parton as a songwriter, and like you said, Caroline, she's so prolific. She came out with a book called Song Teller in 2020, and it has her lyrics and kind of she describes the songs, and it has a lot of photos also. So it's like a really beautiful book to flip through and kind of take in her songwriting ability.
So I mentioned the Christmas album, and then you did Bryce. I might have lied. My favorite Dolly Parton song might actually be Straight Talk, the title song from the hit movie Straight Talk. In addition to her music, she's also been in a number of movies. Have you seen those? Which ones stand out? Laura, have you seen Straight Talk?
I have not seen Straight Talk.
You can stream it on Hoopla.
I didn't. I wanted to watch it before I came here. I haven't. I was aware of it because, again, a lot of my Dolly content is mitigated through other things. I listened to a podcast about bad movies called How Did This Get Made? And they did Rhinestone. Mm-hmm. But then they talked about how Straight Talk is the best. And like the comedian sings a little bit of the song, and sometimes I get like his rendition of the song in my head. Anyway, I haven't seen it. I've seen 9 to 5, of course. Mm-hmm. And I've primarily consumed Christmas Dolly content. So
she's really leaned in on that recently.
Yeah. Recently, although she has like a longer heritage of it, because I watched Christmas on the Square, the one that she won the Emmy for. But I like better, there was a TV movie she made in the 90s called Unlikely Angel.
There absolutely is.
It's amazing. I stumbled upon it because my best friend and I like to watch Christmas movies at Christmas. And I said, Dolly, we're watching this. And it's the same as Christmas on the Square. She's also an angel, but she goes back to Earth to try to help this family, but she has to not fall in love with the head of the family, and then she'll get to be an angel. It's amazing. God visits her as like a force that reminds her not to fall in love by like shaking the cupboards and the rattling the windows and stuff. And it's amazing, and her outfits alone are worth it.
Yeah.
I recommend that to everyone as a Christmas movie they should watch.
It's on my list. It's been on my list to watch for a very long time, and this is the year. This has to be the year.
It's so good. And it's like, it's very silly and very over the top. But then she sings the title song, Unlikely Angel, and you're just like transported. Like, it's a beautiful song.
Yeah. Nice.
Mm-hmm. What about you guys?
I might have watched Straight Talk yesterday.
Nice.
In preparation for today's episode. And yeah, I also second the love for the theme song from Straight Talk, which, by the way, you can also borrow the soundtrack from us. A little bit of a teaser. Straight Talk, and hold the sugar, please. Such an awesome song.
I love it. And it's like, the thing about Straight Talk is that it's so needlessly complicated. Like, there is no reason why they made a big deal about this like talk therapist position. So basically, Dolly Parton gets mistaken for a radio psychologist who has a fancy degree, and she doesn't have a fancy degree, but she can give the best advice to people. So she's living this lie. James Woods is trying to uncover it. There's no reason why the radio station needs to have a medical doctor. That there's just no. It's so easy for it to have not been an issue.
Yeah. And I mean, of course, like you said, too, her advice always leans into like well, as my daddy used to say, it's not the bark in the dog, it's the bite, or whatever it is. But it's always like some sort of like Southern hospitality kind of like common sense advice that she gives. And yeah, there's nothing there. Like, it could have just been like, you know, you don't need the doctor part. It's fine.
Exactly. So I also recommend Straight Talk. Straight Talk. Steel Magnolias, I have watched many, many times. It's one where if I'm flipping around on TV and I see it, I will stop and watch from wherever I see it. She runs the beauty salon in there where the women kind of gather and talk, and yeah, she's just, again, it's the same type of character she's played a lot, but she's exactly right for it. So Steel Magnolias is definitely another Dolly movie that I don't think of it exactly as a Dolly movie because there are so many other actors and actresses in it, but yeah, she's enjoyable in that for sure.
I think even when the movie isn't like the best, like Rhinestone, she's still Dolly, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, even when the movie is silly, it's still, she's there, and you can't help but like watch and admire her.
Yeah, even like 9 to 5 as well. Like, it's a great movie, and definitely very silly at times, and definitely over the top. Where of course she stars in it with Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and of course Dabney Coleman plays their like sexist boss, and he's a total dirtbag in it. But of course they kind of get revenge on him, and that's actually funny because, like, I know there's the Broadway play for it. I'm actually a little surprised we haven't seen a remake of 9 to 5.
Mm-hmm. I saw the musical. It came to the Citadel last year.
Oh, how was it?
It was really good. Yeah,
nice.
I mean, one of the pitfalls I'd say is that 9 to 5 is such a good song that the other songs, it's like a little tricky because you're like, I just want to hear 9 to 5 again. But I mean, the story is great. But that's true, Bryce. I'm surprised that there isn't a remake either. But.
Yeah, just with everything that's kind of happened with, just kind of, you think of workplace culture over the last, 20 or so years, it seems like it would be a perfect time to revive it. But I mean,
that's it. We're calling for it. Remake it, Hollywood.
Let's do it. We give Hollywood so many great movie suggestions on this show, and
Yeah. Whoever's going to help me option The Art Thief, after that, we're going to remake 9 to 5.
You have their career right there. All planned out.
Totally. All right. So, we've talked about her music and, of course, her movies. But, one of the big reasons why we're actually talking about Dolly Parton today, because there's actually a literacy connection between Dolly Parton and libraries. Laura, could you tell us a little bit more about Dolly Parton's Imagination Library and Ready, Set, Read?
Sure. Yeah. So we've already touched on it a little. One of the things that Dolly Parton is best known for in her philanthropy is for setting up the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. She created it in 1995, like Caroline said, because her dad was illiterate. He couldn't read or write. And she said, I've been able to read to all my dreams, but it's hard to do that when you can't, when you're don't have access to reading, and that reading can spark dreams. And so she wanted all children to have access to books as a way to have access to their dreams. And so she started it in Pigeon Forge and in the area that she lived. And then it just grew and grew. And I think, like Caroline said before, she tends to set things up very well, and it's had staying power. And now the Dolly Parton Imagination Library exists in 5 countries, including Canada. It gives away 2 million free books to families a month, which is amazing. So, and she's actually given over 200 million now.
That makes total sense, because my stat was from several years ago, and it's kind of exponential now. Yeah. So I have no problem believing that.
Yeah, I think it's 2.4 now. But even just I think 2 million books a month, that's amazing. So, and that's in the United States, Canada, Republic of Ireland, the UK, and Australia. And we're lucky enough to have it here in Edmonton. So how it works, and I think why it's been so well set up and sustainable, is that they partner with a community group that will carry on the program. And so here in Edmonton, the Edmonton Public Library has created the Ready, Set, Read program. And that program partners with the Dolly Parton Imagination Library to give books out to families all over the city. And they get a free book a month, and from when you're born until you're 5. Which is pretty amazing. And so our part of the program, we raise money for the books, and then the Dolly Parton Imagination Library gives them out. And we're actually the biggest distributor in Canada now, which is amazing. Wow. Yeah, so it's been very successful, it's just an amazing program and an amazing gift that she's given.
One of the things, as Laura knows, when I first started with EPL, I did a lot of work in early literacy and working around this. And there's so many wonderful things that the library can do. But one of the biggest factors for childhood literacy and school success is having access to books, having books in the home. And, when kids want to read, that they have something there. And so for these books to be sent directly to them, they do not need to give them back or return them. They are theirs, and they can then supplement that with great stuff from EPL. Is just such a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you're part of the program, there's occasional events and things, so you can connect with other Ready, Set, Read families. And so there's also that community piece, kind of, that if you're part of the Dolly Parton Imagination Library and Ready, Set, Read world, that you can meet other people who are too. And I think also, I work with the program now, and I've read quite a bit about it, and they just, as a librarian, book choice is really important to me, and they make a really concerted effort. There's really good people working on it, and the book choices are wonderful. They are, a lot of them are country specific, and so the Canada list has several Canadian titles on it, which is really nice to see. So we love Dolly for many reasons, but this is a big one.
Nice.
I had no idea that they were country specific. I kind of would have just thought that, I don't know, they would have just been, the books that are being sent out to Americans are also going here and
no, each country has its own list. I think there's overlap because, the Very Hungry Caterpillar is the Very Hungry Caterpillar, but they try to have national content also. So this is not this is a professional, outfit, like where as a librarian I tip my hat to their book choices.
Yeah. Great. So moving into our roundtable questions, the first one, I'm back with the quizzes. It's been a while. Bryce is shaking his head.
Have you guys, I've been away for a while, have you guys been doing quizzes? I love a quiz. When I saw it, I got right on that.
Occasionally we'll have the odd BuzzFeed quiz that pops up in our roundtable questions. So
really
yeah,
I
enjoy doing it as well. I don't agree with my answer that I got, but
well, I am super curious. The quiz I sent out, which Dolly Parton song best matches your personality? Bryce, I cannot wait. Which is yours?
I got Jolene. So the part that I laugh about is the description for it. It says, you're sassy and confident, totally not me, and know how to get what you want, also not me. Others admire your strong will and determination. You're the type of person that tends to be the life of the party, not me, and always knows how to have a good time. Not really me. So,
I think you're just an inner Jolene. You need to let your inner Jolene out.
Yeah.
Maybe it just means you're just a really good song. Maybe it's not like about the character. It's just about the song itself, which is great.
Yeah. Definitely.
So Laura, which one were you?
I was also Jolene.
Really? I'm recording with a bunch of Jolenes today.
You sure are. Watch your back.
Our fiery red hair is probably a little distracting for you.
Well, I got Islands in the Stream.
Amazing.
I have a carefree spirit and are happiest spending time with people you love. You sometimes tend to avoid responsibilities and opt for fun instead, but you always manage to make it work out in the end. You know what? I'll take it.
Love it.
And I was going to say Islands in the Stream too. Like that would be probably like a Hall of Fame karaoke song. Like you have, couple up there, like as a duet. That would be a great one to break out.
Yeah, I definitely, when I think of Islands in the Stream, I don't think of Dolly singing it. I think of a woman I met on a trip to Vietnam who did karaoke. And I think of her singing it, which is a delight.
Well, maybe nice. I need to do more karaoke. Okay, watch Unlikely Angel, take up karaoke.
Got a Dolly checklist now.
Yeah. Second question, who is someone you'd love to see Dolly do a duet with? She's had so many different partners. Laura, what do you think?
Oh, gosh. She's done a duet. I'll just say one that already happened, which isn't very creative, but I mentioned before, the Brandi Carlile one is amazing. I think Brandi Carlile weirdly is almost, this sounds kind of crazy to say, but she's almost like the successor to Dolly. She doesn't look or act like her. She doesn't have the persona, but she is sort of that like unapologetic person who collaborates with everyone and is sort of the next way of country music.
That makes sense.
I think, just go watch the YouTube video where they sing "I Will Always Love You" together at a folk festival. I cried.
Aww. Bryce, who would you love to see?
All right. So we mentioned this earlier, how she went into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I believe it was just last year. And one of the things that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has kind of been criticized for is over the last few years is inducting artists, of course, who aren't traditionally maybe rock stars. So obviously Dolly Parton. Well, that same year that Dolly Parton went in, we also had Eminem go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So let's break some music chart records and let's have Eminem do a duet with Dolly Parton. I have no idea what they'll sing, but it would be awesome.
I had said Lady Gaga for my answer, but I want to change it to Eminem.
Yeah.
Oh, Lady Gaga's good though.
Yeah, I could find a reference to about 10 years ago where Dolly would say, like, I think it'd be fun to do something with her, but so maybe it's happened. Maybe there's some secret tapes or something out there that exist. I guess we'll see.
I was just going to quickly say, maybe they do like a cover of Jolene where kind of it's similar to Stan, where you have Dolly Parton singing her part, and then like Eminem comes in and raps about something, and then goes back to Dolly singing. I think that could work.
Yeah. Yeah. So in addition to our movie executive, someone get a record producer on the phone as well.
Yeah.
Laura, thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything coming up at EPL that you would like listeners to know about?
I think just a plug for the Ready, Set, Read program, where donations can always be made to it, and it allows more books to be, or more families to be able to register for the program. Right now, registration is closed because we're at capacity, but the more donations we get, the more books we can get out to families in the city.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for letting people know. And we'll have a link to that in the item list. So we hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Make sure that you're subscribed to the show so you get all of our new episodes. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And most importantly, tell a friend about the show.
Yeah, and don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about in today's show notes, so you can put a hold on all the books, great Dolly Parton music, straight talk, which you can stream.
I'm going to go do that right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, we love to hear from our listeners, and you can email us at podcast@epl.ca. Both Caroline and I get those emails, and you can also share your thoughts with us on the show, about the show on Twitter at epl.ca, and use the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.